Right now, a voice inside your head is reading these words. It's an experience so intimate, so constant, that we rarely stop to notice it. It is the silent narrator of your life, the one who reminds you to buy bread, the one who rehearses that difficult conversation you need to have tomorrow, and the one who analyzes your choices. This internal monologue is how you think, imagine, remember, and even argue with yourself. To most of us, this voice feels like the very essence of our consciousness. But what about the world beyond our own species? When a wolf pauses in the snow to coordinate a complex hunt with its pack, when a crow carefully selects and shapes a twig to reach a hidden grub, or when your dog waits by the door, ears perked, minutes before you actually arrive, what is happening in the silence of their minds? Is there a voice there too? Do animals possess a silent inner voice that guides their choices, or do they experience the world in a way humans, reliant on our verbal crutches, could never truly imagine? We are often tempted to project our own experience onto them, imagining a dog thinking the word walk, or a cat thinking hunger. But the reality of their internal life might be far more alien and far more fascinating than a simple translation of human speech. This curiosity leads us to a fundamental human bias. We are a linguistic species. Our cultures, our laws, and our very memories are built on a foundation of words. Because we use language to rationalize our every move and analyze our surroundings, we naturally find it difficult to separate the act of thinking from the act of talking to ourselves. We have spent centuries assuming that language is the lighthouse of the mind, and without it, one is simply lost in the dark. This assumption creates a narrow view of intelligence. Because we rely so heavily on our internal narrator to organize our reality, we frequently view a mind without an inner voice as a void. We look at a silent animal and see a creature driven only by blind instinct, assuming that if there are no words to describe a thought, the thought itself must not exist. Recent psychological research suggests our definition of thinking is too small. We now know that a significant number of high-functioning, intelligent humans live with a condition called anerelia, the total absence of an inner monologue. These individuals don't hear a voice when they think. They don't rehearse their sentences in their heads, and they don't use words to solve puzzles. Instead, people with anerelia describe their thoughts as a series of nonverbal concepts, spatial maps, and emotional logic. They might see a solution as a physical shape or a sense of fit, rather than a sentence. They navigate the complexities of life, hold professional careers, and create art, all while operating in what most of us would consider total internal silence. Their minds are active and sharp, proved by their ability to complete the same cognitive tasks as those with a verbal voice, often with equal or greater efficiency. This evidence from our own species changes the stakes in our question. If human intelligence can thrive and problem solve without a verbal inner narrator, then the silence of the animal kingdom looks very different. It suggests that a lack of words is not a lack of thought. It invites us to look past the absence of language and search for the specific, wordless tools animals use to construct their reality. To understand how an animal thinks without words, we have to look at the tools they do have. For many, the primary language of the mind isn't sound, it's sensory data. Consider the dog waiting at the door. Scientists have found that dogs don't just miss us, they perceive time through their noses. As the day progresses, the scent you left behind in the morning slowly fades. To a dog, the room is a physical timeline. They don't need a voice in their head saying, "It has been 8 hours." They can smell the specific concentration of your scent that typically precedes your arrival. Their inner voice is a complex, three-dimensional map of olfactory memory, allowing them to predict the future by analyzing the chemical remnants of the past. In the matriarchal societies of elephants, this wordless memory takes on a grander scale. An old matriarch can lead her herd across hundreds of miles of parched savanna to a specific watering hole she hasn't visited in 30 years. She isn't following a list of written directions or a verbal story passed down through generations. Instead, she utilizes powerful visual and tactile mental imagery. She holds a vast internal library of topographical maps and sensory landmarks. navigating through a mental reconstruction of the world that is as precise as any human GPS. These behaviors show us that the goals of human memory, planning for the future and recalling the past, are achieved in the animal kingdom through a sophisticated tapestry of smells, images, and spatial data. They don't need to describe the world to themselves in sentences because they are busy experiencing it through a rich, multi-sensory internal playback system. Memory is one thing, but what about active, abstract problem solving? For that, we look to the corvids, the crows and ravens, and our primate cousins. These animals show us that the mind can argue with the laws of physics without using a single noun. This diagram represents a famous study involving New Caledonian crows. To get a piece of food, the crow must use a short stick to retrieve a longer stick, which is then used to reach the food. This is a multi-step, sequential problem. The crow doesn't just peck randomly. It stands before the puzzle, completely still for several seconds. It is observing the layout, identifying the constraints, and mentally organizing the steps required to reach the goal. During that silence, the crow is engaging in what neuroscientists call mental simulation. It is playing out the physical scenario in its mind, testing the sequence before it commits to a physical action. This is the geometric equivalent of an internal dialogue. Instead of thinking, if I use stick A, I get stick B, the crow's brain fires neurons in the same patterns it would use to actually perform the task. It is simulating the future, rejecting failures, and selecting the path to success entirely within a wordless, physical theater of the mind. This form of thought is a direct argument with reality. By simulating the physical world, these animals are reasoning through cause and effect. They aren't just reacting to what they see. They are manipulating mental objects to see what happens next. In many ways, this is a more direct form of logic than human speech, which often obscures the very problems we are trying to solve. But even the crow's mind has a central brain. To see a truly different inner voice, we look to the octopus. If the crow is an expert at mental simulation, the octopus is a master of a completely decentralized consciousness. The octopus represents the most radical departure from the human cognitive model. It is an intelligence that evolved along an entirely different path, resulting in a mind that is spread throughout its entire body. In this model of the octopus nervous system, you can see that 2/3 of its neurons are located not in its head, but in its arms. Each arm can effectively think for itself. They can explore, taste, and even decide to grab an object without waiting for a command from the central brain. The octopus doesn't have a single inner voice because it has a chorus of decentralized processing nodes. It is a distributed intelligence, solving problems in a parallel, simultaneous flow of information that makes our linear, one-word-at-a-time thinking look incredibly slow. An octopus can solve complex mazes and recognize individual humans, yet it does so through an architecture that has no room for a centralized narrator. It proves that profound, creative problem-solving can thrive in a system that doesn't just lack words, but lacks a single central point of self as we understand it. When we step back and look at the data, a clear picture emerges. The scientific consensus is that animals are not biological machines acting on instinct alone. They possess detailed mental representations of their environment, their history, and their future needs. We can measure their ability to plan, their capacity for grief, and their skill at simulation. What science cannot yet touch is the subjective quality of that thought. We know they think, but we don't know what it feels like. Is the crow's simulation as vivid as a movie? Does the octopus experience its arms as a conversation or a symphony of touch? This remains the great mystery. Our internal monologue serves as a specialized interface for our specific brand of human intelligence. It helps us navigate a world of social rules and shared language. That, as we have seen, it is just one way to run a mind. The absence of a voice doesn't mean the lights are out. It just means the mind is using a different operating system, one built on sensory depth and spatial logic rather than grammar. We are beginning to see that the animal mind is a dense tapestry of sensory data, spatial planning, and emotional resonance. A world of vivid colors, of sharp smells, and complex physical simulations that don't need to be translated into English to be real. By looking for our own voice in them, we have been missing the incredible music they are already making. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't whether animals have an inner voice, but whether we're asking the wrong question. Maybe their minds aren't quieter than ours, just completely different. And if that is true, the natural world around us may be far more conscious than we ever imagined. If you enjoyed exploring one of nature's greatest mysteries, subscribe for more documentaries uncovering the hidden minds, emotions, instincts, and intelligence of animals, because every question brings us one step closer to understanding the world we share.